I have been playing the game that everyone is talking about at the moment because it's doing pretty bloody well. I have been playing and have finished playing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, the game by Bethesda Softworks, published by Microsoft. It's a Microsoft exclusive, and it's getting pretty damn good reviews. It is a...
it's actually by Machine Games and published by Bethesda, which is
Machine Games published by Bethesda. It's on a Microsoft system. There you go. That's also indie.
Microsoft owned Bethesda.
Microsoft owned Bethesda now. I don't care about that stuff. For the first time I tried mentioning it. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a first-person adventure exploration game that is a wonderful take on the series. A lot of people went into this skeptical about both if it would be fun being first-person Indiana Jones and whether or not, this was going to actually be as adventurous as a lot of the third-person action games that came before it. Indy famously has been the inspiration for your Tomb Raiders, your Uncharted's. So sort of going back to the source material and giving it a fresh coat of paint, and one that I think it well and truly deserves. The game, as I mentioned, is a first-person, much more slowed down puzzler, exploration, almost immersive sim, not quite in the sense that it is very linear in its story, but the progression of that and some of the ways that you can explore the areas do feel like an immersive sim, particularly based on the fact that in terms of levels, there's really only maybe like 5 areas you travel to, but they are expansive. They include the Vatican City, the Pyramids of Giza, an area in, it's Indonesia, but it's Indonesian jungles, and a couple of others. But they are themselves... Sukhothai is the name of it in the game. Yeah. Is it still called that in real life?
I don't know. It might be.
They were speaking Cambodian. Anyway, point is, this is an adventure that takes place between Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade. And so it is a chance for them to tell a story without an aging Harrison Ford.
You could pick.
Because we do have Troy Baker. That was the other thing I was going to point out. People were skeptical about first person and Troy Baker. I actually think they absolutely bloody nailed both of these. So a lot of people are eating their hat. And the game, as I mentioned, is really about embodying everything there is to be about indie, which is fisticuffs, it's exploration, it's a lot of stealth, and it's not a lot of gunplay, which is, a bold step from Machine Games, who, got really big through reinventing and revitalizing the Wolfenstein franchise. Here, as I said, it's slowed down, and it does feel a little bit more like your Dishonored's or any of those kind of games where you are all about exploring the area, opening up different pathways, picking up and reading a lot of notes and bits of information that are scattered throughout the world, and then taking out guards who are sort of patrolling very clunky routes and some very clunky AI. But God, I love it, because everything here that feels dated as a gameplay mechanic or game design is just something that I think people are really, really have been craving for a long time. This doesn't feel like a feature-rich game. It just feels like it just hones in on what it knows it can do well, and that is these beautiful environments, these fairly simple puzzles, and these rudimentary little bouts of combat that you have with Nazis, Italian fascists, and I think that's kind of it.
That's also, like the guard, I feel like the guards in like the kind of cronies in Indiana Jones movies have always felt clunky.
Oh, yeah. Well, a big part of, as I mentioned before, any of the gameplay limitations, i.e. the like really bad AI and the fact that they really can't spot you. You can almost walk next to them. Yeah. But if you watch an Indiana Jones movie, it is all about like creeping next to some crates, and it's like, of course they'd see you, but for the purpose of the story, it makes sense. The story itself is actually, I think, really good. I think this is the Indiana Jones film that I wish. Oh, hello.
Scotty,
please. This is better as a story than I think Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny, and it does definitely feel like a young Indiana Jones story because it is placed in that kind of era. The issue I had with the story and while the cutscenes are well acted, the comparisons that this will inevitably draw to the films is the duration of the story. An Indiana Jones film is a tight, rollicking adventure that just does not slow down for any reason, as these people will tell you. Indiana Jones films are just pulpy and fun, and they just move at a cracking pace. For the sake of a video game, this obviously has to move slower and be padded out with a lot more game, but also the cutscenes and the narratives themselves feel a little like it just feels slow because I know how fast an indie story should be told. So there are times that there are cutscenes where characters MacGuffins are moving around a bit more than they would, and characters are kind of slowly coming to realizations a bit slower than again they would maybe in a film. And then the other comparison I feel it's warranted to make to the films themselves is Spielberg's directing and cinematography, and Pete, Will, and I have spoken about this at length over the week. Like, you forget just how beautifully shot those films are, and that they really do use every part of the scene, of the framing. Spielberg does all that work. And here you've just got a lot of what I would call reasonably generic cutscenes, which were just wides of two characters having a conversation. And you feel there's a little bit of cinema magic lost. And it's not fully fair to make that comparison, but it is such a known cinema property that it does feel a bit like, yeah, you feel a little bit... Is she all right?
Yeah, she might go and puke a little bit or something.
Oh, okay, me too, actually, later on. So that's fine. So yeah, I think, you can't avoid the fact that you're going to draw comparisons to the films, to the source films. That said, everything else feels great, and I've really just enjoyed playing what feels like an Xbox 360 game in design, I guess. It's polished it looks beautiful, all the environments are fantastic, and just every time you pull out to get an indie shot in a cutscene or just through an action like a climbing a ladder or something, the models and the detail are so wonderful, and you see this beautifully rendered young Harrison and it just makes you smile. Will, I know you're playing
Every
this
time
too.
I look at an old Harrison Ford,
makes
I
me
grimace.
I
get so sad.
Watching any actor age
Yuck.
out of a famous portrait that they kind of...
Not if you like Dial of Destiny. He's always indie.
Oh, God. You're another big indie fan.
Yeah. My top line, because I don't want to go the other direction, which is where I am sitting with it.
Sure.
Is I don't think it's very good on any front.
Oh.
But the thing that I think I've come to is that Machine Games, maybe just Todd, really wanted to tell an Indiana Jones story, but are not a director, or not making films. And we're
Todd's not really involved.
Isn't he?
No.
right.
He works at
Approved.
Bethesda Softworks, which is the dev team that Bethesda had.
But that was the whole thing, was that he wanted to make a
Yeah,
Indiana
but
Jones
he's
game.
really just overseeing.
It's like Phil Spencer saying he wants a Japanese studio.
Yeah.
I don't care about what that is. But,
Oh, yeah, you don't
so,
like
yeah,
that.
I don't. You just said a lot of things.
That's fair enough.
I
He
think
enabled them to
but-
make the game,
yeah.
and then they've run with it, and
yeah,
they've turned
and
into
they
that.
wanted to make an Indiana Jones story, and I think for me the game gets in the way of it being that, because I don't think the game is very good in terms of it's very
It's kind of weird because
slow
I
and
agree with
clunky,
you,
yeah.
but it's like I've missed that in my games,
So-
and so
yeah.
again, it feels a bit like King Kong, the Peter Jackson experience, the game, or it feels like a slow, ploddy, kind of like spend a couple of hours each night with it versus it's feature rich. It's trying to shove itself down my throat of like, there's so much here you've never seen before.
I would like to point out that my feeling about my feeling going into this game was that Machine Games weren't the right studio because they make really great, and they surprised me when they made the Wolfenstein games. Yep. They make beautiful boomer shooters. They're the best on the market, the best modern boomer shooter, absolutely. And the thing that I thought, I kind of rested my hope on how good their character work was in those games.
Yep.
Because you're right, they're not great cutscene direction, but the characters, they made BJ
That was such
Blazkowicz
a
a character
surprise.
worth listening to. They made all of the supporting cast really interesting.
They do villains amazingly well.
They do villains beautifully.
Nazis.
And so when I saw this game, I was like, that's their way into making this thing because it can't be a shooter. I don't know what they're going to do with the gameplay, and now that I've played a bit of it, I agree. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
But I haven't played enough of it.
Yeah.
I actually haven't touched it. I watched you play it in
Yeah.
our playback,
Yep.
and I thought it looked fun enough, but basic and clunky.
Yeah.
But we just listened to a couple of moments of characters talking to each other, and I was like, okay, they fucking nailed it.
Yeah.
And I haven't touched it yet. But I'm like, this is a perfect Indiana Jones game. The way that these characters are talking to each other, the way that they've written the dialogue, the way that the performances engage with each other, seems to me, it feels like an Indiana Jones film.
And for all the sort of things that the gameplay gets wrong, it does lead you to play the game like you're in an Indiana Jones film, be it you are stealthily but sort of clumsily getting around. I've played the whole game and I'd never wanted to pull out my gun. I knew how much they penalized you using the gun. Basically, you fire it and everyone just comes running and will kill you, and he takes one good bullet and goes down, as should any real life
But
protagonist.
not them.
But not
They will take
them.
about 9 bullets in the skull.
Yeah, there is
before they go
There is
down.
an element of
That's
it
weird.
that
Yeah.
they sort of that does. There's a disconnect there that has to happen. But once you learn that happens,
I
you
shot a
stop
guy in a
doing it.
soft hat, and the hat flew off,
Yeah.
and that was his protection.
I
Yeah, but that's
agree.
Indiana Jones.
I agree that sucks,
Yeah.
but it also you do it
Sick.
once and then you'll never do it again because you'll go, I need to go and beat them up and I can't use my
Yeah,
gun.
sure.
And it makes you stop playing it like a shooter. But you are right, that is like the only way they can really get you there to do it. And so it trains you to play differently, and it is slower. And I was surprised at how much I couldn't. Even when you find a machine gun or a shotgun occasionally, I just didn't want to use it. And I do love that the game lets you turn it around and make it a melee weapon that you can use until it breaks. So, I agree. I think it's really commendable that machine games have not just painted themselves as we just make really good shooters. And they aren't maybe the best team for the gameplay element of this in terms of how the stealth and the movement does feel. But I think they do a really bloody good job of it. Like, it could have been who did Dishonored or like Deathloop, or like it could have been a team who'd cut their teeth
An Arcane
on
game.
or Prey or any of those
Yep.
the devs on those who go, oh, we know how this genre works. But I think this was a bold first step for them to play in that space. And I really hope, and I'm based on its success, I hope this spawns a couple more adventures in between because they really respect the source material. I totally get your point, Will. And for someone who doesn't play that many games, I can see the frustration of loving the source material of the film and going, there's just a lot of stuff in the way of this story.
'Cause
And then if you watch just the
That's
cutscenes,
what
you
I'm
go,
excited to do once, because I think I've got about an hour left.
Okay.
And I immediately will watch the 4-hour video on YouTube just to actually watch the film. And I think
and then you won't
yeah.
watch a great film.
No.
I would say a great indie story, and it
Yes.
does feel like
Yeah.
they've done a really good job of hitting all the notes.
Because there's just there's a few moments where there's gameplay in between, like 10-second cutscenes where
Yeah.
I'm like, I get into the story and I get ripped out again. So I think a cut together film will work for me. I think so.
Will work. Otherwise, it's great. It's on Game Pass, and I'm so happy that it's good because I was hanging my hat on that one.